It began with a secret so heavy that one woman carried it for 40 years and never spoke a word of it to another living soul, and that secret sat inside a rosary, the simplest object a nun could own. If you had seen her, you would have seen nothing worth a second glance: an old woman in a dark habit, moving slowly down a stone corridor, her fingers wrapped around a string of plain wooden beads. And yet those beads held more than prayer. Hidden inside them, pressed into hollow shells no bigger than a thumbnail, were the crown jewels of a fallen kingdom, diamonds and emeralds and rubies worth more than most countries, resting quietly against her chest while empires rose and collapsed around her. This is the story of how a woman of God became the last line of defense for a royal treasure, and how she kept it safe through war, betrayal, and a hunt that never ended. My name is The Secret Nun, and if stories like this of brave women, secret missions, and true events that changed history are the reason you're here, then subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss the next one. Now let me take you back to the night it all began. The kingdom in question was not a large one, but it was old, and its crown jewels were the pride of a royal line that had ruled for centuries. For generations those jewels had sat in a vault beneath the palace, brought out only for coronations and royal weddings, their value so immense that kings borrowed against them in times of war. But every dynasty ends, and this one ended faster than anyone expected. In the winter of that final year, revolution swept through the capital like a flood, and the royal family saw the writing on the wall long before the palace gates fell. The king called his most trusted advisors into a private chamber and gave a single order: the crown jewels must not fall into the hands of the enemy. Not for the money, though the money was staggering, but because those jewels were the soul of the kingdom, the proof that the royal line still lived, still had a claim, still had a future. If the enemy captured them, the old world would be truly gone. So on a cold night, under the cover of darkness, the jewels were quietly removed from the vault and divided among a handful of trusted servants, each given a piece to carry and a place to hide. And that is where our story truly begins, because most of those servants were caught, and most of those pieces were lost. But one piece, the most precious of all, ended up in the hands of a nun named Sister Marguerite. Sister Marguerite was not a young woman when the jewels came to her. She had spent 30 years in the convent, and in all that time she had done the same quiet work, tending the sick, teaching the children of the village, and praying. She was the kind of woman no one noticed, and that, as it turned out, was exactly why she was chosen. On the night the revolution reached its breaking point, a wounded royal guard stumbled to the convent gates carrying a small wooden box. He was dying, and he knew it, and with his last strength he pressed that box into Sister Marguerite's hands and made her swear an oath she did not fully understand. "Protect this with your life," he told her. "Tell no one. Not even the other sisters. And when the time is right, return it to the rightful heir." Then he was gone, into the night, and Sister Marguerite was left standing alone in the dark with a box she was too afraid to open. She carried it to her cell and locked the door, and for the first time in 30 years of peaceful devotion, she found herself terrified, because she understood, in that moment, that the life she had known was over, and that a new and dangerous one had just begun. When she finally opened the box, her hands were shaking, and what she saw made her knees give way. It was not money or papers or anything she expected. It was the royal diadem, the crown worn by every queen of the realm for 400 years, studded with stones so bright they seemed to glow in the candlelight. She knew what it was the second she saw it. Everyone in the kingdom knew what it was. It was the most famous object in the country, painted into every portrait, stamped onto every coin, and now it was sitting on the rough wooden floor of her convent cell. And in that instant she understood the terrible truth of her position. If anyone found this in her possession, she would be hanged, and not just her, every sister in the convent could be dragged into it. She could not bury it, because the grounds would be searched. She could not hide it in the walls, because soldiers tear through walls. And she could not give it to another, because she had sworn an oath to the dying guard, and to break that oath would have haunted her for the rest of her life. So she sat there all night, praying, and somewhere before dawn the answer came to her: the one place no soldier would ever think to look, and the one object no one would ever think to search. Her rosary. Here is the part that still amazes historians to this day. A rosary is not a solid thing, it is made of beads strung together, and each bead, if you are clever enough, can be opened. Sister Marguerite spent the next 3 nights doing something no nun had ever done before. She took apart her own rosary, bead by bead, and she removed the stones from the diadem one by one. Then she hollowed out each wooden bead, just enough to press a single gem inside, and sealed it shut again so perfectly that no eye could ever tell it had been opened. The diadem itself, the gold frame, she melted down in the convent's own fire, a little at a time, folding the metal into a plain cross that hung at the end of the rosary like 100 other crosses in 100 other convents. By the time she was finished, the crown jewels of a fallen kingdom had vanished from the face of the earth. There was no box. There was no hiding place. There was only an old nun and her prayer beads, and the two things looked exactly the way they had always looked, which was the entire point. The most valuable treasure in Europe was now, to every eye that saw it, simply gone. The soldiers came, of course. They came within days, because word had leaked that the jewels had been smuggled out of the palace, and the new rulers of the country would stop at nothing to find them. They searched the convent top to bottom. They emptied the storerooms and lifted the floorboards and tore through the chapel. They questioned every nun, and when the nuns had no answers, they threatened them, and when threats did not work, they beat the old women in front of one another to force the truth out. And through all of it, Sister Marguerite sat quietly in her cell with her rosary in her hands, her thumb moving from bead to bead the way it had moved for 30 years, and she watched them destroy the only home she had ever known. Twice a soldier grabbed at her rosary, and twice she turned it into a blessing, pressing it to her lips, muttering a prayer, the very picture of a harmless old woman lost in devotion. And the soldiers, who were looking for a box or a hiding place or a nervous traitor, never once thought to break open the beads of a nun's rosary. The treasure they had torn the country apart to find passed through their fingers a dozen times, and they never felt its weight. That is the genius of hiding something in plain sight. You do not make it invisible, you make it unremarkable, and there is nothing more unremarkable in a convent than a nun praying with her beads. But the danger did not end when the soldiers left, and this is where the story gets darker. The new rulers never stopped hunting for the jewels, and as the years passed they grew more desperate and more cruel. They knew the treasure was still in the country somewhere, hidden by someone, and they made it known that the reward for information was enough to make a poor man rich for life. That was the moment Sister Marguerite learned the hardest lesson of her secret. The threat would never come from the enemy she could see, but from the friends she could not afford to trust. A neighbor who once smiled at her in the market might, for that reward, suddenly remember seeing her with a royal guard on a cold winter night. A fellow sister, driven to fear or exhaustion, might let a single word slip. And so Sister Marguerite made a decision that broke her heart and saved her life. She told no one. Not the Mother Superior. Not the sisters she had loved for decades. Not the priest who heard her confession. For 40 years she carried a secret that would have ended her, and she carried it completely alone, because she understood that the moment a secret has two keepers, it is no longer a secret at all. And here is what nobody tells you about keeping a secret: that long it changes you. Sister Marguerite continued her quiet work, teaching children and tending the sick, and no one who saw her would have guessed the weight she carried. But every time a stranger lingered too long at the gate, she felt her heart quicken. Every time the revolution soldiers passed through the village, she held the rosary a little tighter. Every time she lay down to sleep, she did so knowing the stones were still there, still hidden, still waiting, and that she might never live to see them returned. There were nights she thought about throwing the whole thing into the river and being free of it. But she never did, because she had made a promise to a dying man, and because somewhere, she believed, there was still a rightful heir who would one day come home. That belief was the only thing that kept her going through the decades, the quiet certainty that her suffering was not meaningless, that she was not hiding treasure for herself, but keeping a promise alive until the world was ready for it again. Then, after 40 years, the world finally was. The revolution that had toppled the kingdom had itself collapsed, and the old royal family, what remained of it, began to return from exile. And in that return, Sister Marguerite saw the thing she had been waiting for her entire adult life: a young man, the grandson of the fallen king, who had come back to claim a throne most people had forgotten existed. He was not a powerful man. He had no army and no fortune. What he had was a name, and a bloodline, and a claim that meant nothing without the one thing that had always proved a monarch's right to rule. He needed the crown jewels, and the crown jewels were gone, or so the entire world believed. And that was when Sister Marguerite, now an old woman with failing eyes and hands bent from decades of labor, walked slowly out of her convent for the first time in years and asked for an audience with the man who would be king. Imagine that moment. Picture this tired old nun, in her patched habit and her worn shoes, standing before the young heir in a borrowed room, while his advisors whispered that she was wasting their time. She reached into her robes and drew out the same plain rosary she had carried for 40 years, and she held it up to the light. And then, with fingers that no longer worked the way they once had, she began to open the beads. One by one, she pressed them apart, and one by one the stones came out, the great diamond first, then the emeralds, then the rubies, each one untouched, each one flawless, each one exactly where she had hidden it 4 decades before. The room fell silent. The advisors stopped whispering. And the young heir, who had spent his whole life in exile being told that his family's glory was dead and buried, watched as it was returned to him in the hands of a woman who had never once in 40 years asked for a single thing in return. She could have kept it. That is the detail that matters most. She could have, at any point in those 40 years, removed a single stone and sold it and lived the rest of her life in comfort. No one would have known. No one would have blamed her. And yet she never did, and when the heir offered her a reward, wealth, a home, a place of honor for the rest of her days, she refused all of it. She asked only to return to her convent and live out her remaining years in peace. And she did, quietly, the way she had done everything else. When she died, the jewels she had saved were back where they belonged, sitting on the head of a king who owed his entire reign to the faith of a woman who had asked for nothing. Now, before I let you go, I want to ask you something, because this story has a question hiding inside it. Sister Marguerite kept a secret for 40 years, in complete silence, for a promise she made to a dying man she barely knew. So I want to know, could you do it? Could you carry a burden that heavy, that alone, for that long, and never once let it slip? Drop your answer in the comments below, because I genuinely want to hear what you think, and I read every single one. And if this story gave you that same chill it gave me, that feeling of a treasure hidden in plain sight, of a faith stronger than an empire, then share this video with one person who loves history the way you do, because stories like this deserve to travel. Thank you for watching, and remember, the greatest treasures in history were never found, because the people who kept them understood one simple truth. The safest place to hide the most valuable thing in the world is in the hands of the one person no one ever thinks to look at. Until next time, this is the Secret Nun, signing off.